Okay,
Interesting, I didn't know that.
good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this afternoon. Introducing the panel members is Cynthia Stevens to my left and Carrie Linkletter to her left. And representing the city from the assessment department is Jeremy Poole. The recording secretary is Michelle Nepen. We'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. Thank you. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application and will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant or the assessor make at the hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessment of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the city administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issue a written order that will mail to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the management of the municipal board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application from exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, the information will be included in the board's order. In respect to the application process this afternoon, we'll confirm the matters to be addressed with each of the applicants following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then it'll be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant will leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this afternoon. The session will close after all application has been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. We'll ask our secretary to swear in Mr. Poole and to swear in Mr. Rack. Jeremy Rack.
You swear that the evidence you're going to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so.
Oh, in front of you?
Yes. Well, I'm just
Can
looking.
you state your full name, please?
It's
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
All right, we're going to go to 1790 Main Street. And Mr. Poole, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property.
File number is 194317. Roll number is 1102062700. Address number, civic address number is 1790 Main Street. The 2020 assessment was for $949,000. After review of the applicant's submission, the assessment department is prepared to accept the recommendation for $741,000.
Okay. Do you have a workup
In
for
the
that?
applicant's brief.
In the applicant's brief?
Would you like to go through their workup or?
No, I just wanted to get to the figure. So you're at 741?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Rack, are you in agreement with that figure? Yes. All right, any panel members, any questions?
Yes, this is based on a sale.
We looked at the sale. There was a sale that was for October 5th, 2016, for $520,000. Not only, I don't look at one particular sale in isolation, but I look at the marketplace in itself. The marketplace rent that the applicant has brought in is similar to what I would put on the property, given that its location on Main Street. And then the parameters fall as they may. They're using $13.45 for rent for this space. Their vacancy, they're matched with ours at 5.5. They're also using only the 2% for expenses. There's no argument from the 5% management or management-related costs. And then there's an increase in capitalization rate, 6.75, which is not is on the high side of our range, but given the location of the property, in context with this, looking at the sale as well, it's not out.
Thank you.
So is this recorded as a recommendation or not?
Or just
Or just like a?
his brief?
His brief,
Yeah, okay.
yeah?
Okay.
So basically, you're feeling the model was spitting things out a little too high here?
No, but I mean, we look at, if there's a sale, we look at it. The sale was in October of 2016, so it's about a year and 5 months outside the reference date. So that's not something that we wouldn't look at. You should be looking at that sale. And given the location of the property, our comparables on Main Street in that location, about a $13 rent to $14 rent is reasonable. And pretty much the rest of the parameters are within our scope as well, so.
All right, we'll go to Regent Avenue West.
Can we do St. Mary's next? That's another one we get on.
Okay. We'll go to 20 St. Mary's Road. Paul.
File number is 194395. Roll number is 060911000300. Civic address is 20 St. Mary's Road. The assessment for 2020 was originally $1,203,000. After review of the property, I'm going to make a recommendation for $977,528, rounded up $978,000. So,
Mr. Rack,
Yes, I'm in agreement.
agreement?
would you like the parameters?
You can briefly touch on them, sure.
Sure. The overall rent put on the property is $14.50. The vacancy is 5.5, so it produces a PGI of 67,918. With vacancy taken off, produces a PGI of 64,183. With our shortfall at $7 and our 2% non-recoverable expenses, summating to an expense allowance of $33,087, produces a net operating income of $61,096, and then capped at 6.25 gives us our value at $977,528, and of course rounded up to the next digit is $978,000.
I thank you, Mr. Paul. Any questions from the panel? Okay. You want to go to Regent now? Regent Avenue West, 549. So, Mr. Paul, whenever you're ready.
File number is 194319. Roll number is 0900546750. Civic address is 549 Regent Avenue West. The assessment year is 2020, value is $1,383,000. This is a one-story property, built in 1979. There's approximately 6,600 square feet of leasable area. If you look on my page 9, are the photographs of the property. I'll cut up page 9. So after page 9 is also some additional photographs of the property. So we have a sale in December of 2016 for $780,000. storm value, $780,000. We have an additional sale, for August of 18, $1,350,000. That sale, although it occurred in August of 18, the agreed upon date was May of 2018. That's on my page 11. On my page 11, as you go forward, also indicates that there was financing involved for a mortgage. So that sale price must have been before the reference date, so right at the reference date, or just shortly before it. So, we go through the property. It's indicated it's in very good condition. There's one, if you look down at line 5, was there a market appraisal report or opinion of value completed on the property at the time of sale? Yes, $1,350,000. What was a little bit concerning was on point 7, is this a full interest sale? They checked off no, and they didn't check in the details. I'm assuming that this no is incorrect, that it was a full interest sale. It does look to be a full interest sale to me, so line 15, just indicated it was in very good condition at the time of sale. So, then on the next page is on page 13, is the sale that occurred in December 16. It was for $780,000. If you look down, highlighted line 5, was there an appraisal report or an opinion value completed on the property at the time of sale? Yes, it was approximately $1.2 million. And again, this was a full interest sale. Everything else is indicating that it was an average condition if you look at line 15. And on that, page 14, or I should say on page 14, it indicated that the capitalization rate of the property was 7%. That's what this page is for. It's a bit of an anomaly when it was sold for $780,000, and then shortly after, $1.35 million. It indicates on the one sale, the lower sale, that it was average condition, and then on the latter sale indicated it was very good condition. I checked to see if there was any permits done on the property on my page 21. I looked for permits, did not find any major permits. Just wasn't any. There was no value change as far as declaration of construction. There's no permits indicating, but it does appear that there may have been some kind of a renovation to the property. I'm not sure at this point. On page 15 is our income and expense questionnaire for the 2017 year. They check off that it's net on the first page. They indicate the net rent, and they indicate your recoverables are 0 all the way through. On the next column, for annual expenses, they indicate what the annual expenses are. They also indicate the total leasable area is 7,434 square feet. We're using 6,600 square feet. On the following, page 17, indicates the tenancies within the building. 7 tenants. They're all checked off as net. They're reported as such. So we get back to my page, I'll go through the analysis now, on my page 3. I'm sure the panel has seen these comparables before, but I'll go through them again. These are our OFS rent comparables for this cycle. Comparables number 35 through to 40 is the subject property, which indicates rent range between $17.07 to $21.67. If you look on page 4 for analysis for the 65 properties, for 141,000 square feet of inventory, we have an average rent of $14.06, a weighted average of $13.86, and a median of $13.75. So it is a fairly tight analysis, with the subject property being exceeding it at a little bit of the higher end of the rent range, the high end of the rent range. Our analysis did not put a $20, average $20 rent on the property. We put a $15.50 cent overall average for the 6,600 square feet of space. So not the over 7,000 square feet of space. When we run our analysis, panel limits run out to be for 6,600 square feet of rent, or of leasable area at that rent. We have a potential rent of 102,813, vacancy at 5.5%. Effective gross income then yields $97,158. Expenses at 2%, shortfall at 7%, which yields a net operating income of $92,674. Our capitalization rate is 6.7, which gives us a value of $1,383,194, or rounded $1,383,000. So our marketplace analysis projected what this value. It happened to be an actual sale that was basically right at that range. With that, I'm open to questions. I think the value is pretty much bang on with market, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Mr. Reck?
Yes. So on page 5, the average there, 1558, that was a computer model generated, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So typically speaking, you supply comparables close to the subject property to be in the same kind of condition, the same kind of use?
Typically, we went citywide, to come up with what a range is for comparable similar size space. But yes, typically. Yes.
Okay. And I see in all your comparables, you have no comparables on Region Avenue except for the subject property, correct?
These are the comparables that leased up. If there were any comparables that leased up, they would be included in the analysis.
Okay. So with all the, Region Avenue has a lot of strip malls and a lot of retail strips, and there's no rents you can get off Region?
For an office building, we're not looking at retail. So I'm looking at an OFS, not a retail-related property.
Oh, but wouldn't you agree that, the strip centers?
It could support a retail rent, if that's what
Okay.
you're saying.
I'd like you to take it to page 13, that sale. Take a look, it states here there was an arm's length transaction, so that would be a willing buyer, a knowledgeable willing buyer, and a knowledgeable willing seller would come to agree on a price. And it says here that it was appraised at 1.2 million and it paid $780,000. That's $421,000 difference. Do you think there's something goofy with that sale that was so low?
I can't tell you, I wasn't involved personally with the sale. All I can report is what was reported on the sales questionnaire.
Okay.
Findings. All I can say is that, given the two sales in short proximity, and one reporting as an average condition and the other one reporting as very good, that there may have been a renovation that occurred to this property or something that occurred within the property. But I'm not the owner of the property, I can't tell you.
But you provided all the permits on the property, it doesn't appear like any kind of major
No,
renovations.
that's why I included them. Yes, I searched for our permit department, and I didn't see any.
Okay. Page 15. So on the left-hand side, let's start with page, we have on page 15, first of all, come up with a net operating income. We have the income on the left-hand side, and then in the middle we have expenses. And you would agree that net operating income is all the income from all sources subtract expenses, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's look at page 17. So on page 17, the owner's got property tax recoveries, admin recoveries, and utility recoveries. But if we turn to page 15, he hasn't filled anything out, and he's put a 0 across everything, so I assume that he's read it to come up and to look at the general recoveries because he's filled it out, but he hasn't put any of those recoveries in there. Do you know why?
I could tell you, you're the agent, the owner. All I'm looking at is on page 17.
Mhm.
It looks like it's a triple net. They're getting recoveries, they're indicating it's net. that to me. On page 15, they check off that it's a net income, and then they check off they put their expenses in on the middle column, but they don't put any recoveries in on the left-hand side, so.
Okay.
I can't tell you whether or not those expenses are paid in full by the owner or by the tenant, or
So we just don't know at this point in time.
just from what I'm getting from the sign.
But if there's a discrepancy, or I could say inconsistent information has been filled out in this form, correct?
I
Doesn't
can't
mean
make that
you-
call, I'm not asking for inconsistent information at this point.
No, but I'm just saying, it looks like it's inconsistent information, because basically he's listing on page 17 all the recoveries. On page 15, he doesn't put any of the recoveries in, so I would say that's somewhat inconsistent on how he filled it out.
From one page to the other, yes.
Okay. So, take a look at the actual net operating income. What is the actual net operating income that the owner has for that property? Do you agree it's $17,976?
That's what they wrote down, yes.
Okay. So there's a question whether or not that rent is net. We don't really know.
Well, I don't know if all these expenses are being paid for by the owner or by the tenant.
Yeah, we don't know that. So if we don't know that, it could be a net or it may not be a net, because we don't know that.
If you are using and this gets to my point, I'll bring it up now, I'll bring it up in a few moments' time. We're doing a fee simple approach with unencumbered by lease, market-based information. We're not doing a contract approach or leasehold interest. This is a lead, if you're getting that, we should be using the INE in verbatim as it's being reported. There's a bit of discrepancy, or there's a bit of a, as you put, a goofy way of accounting for it on the 2 pages. But our department is not using contract rent, we're using market-based approach on a fee simple basis. So from that point, if there is an error one way or the other, it doesn't influence our market-based approach for value.
Okay. So you're relying on the market then?
We do fee simple unencumbered by lease.
But would you agree that in some cases, under the appraisal methodology, that contract rent can be market rent?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But you would have to test it against market.
Correct. I think that's all my questions for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
I was just, the difference in the leasable area from your first page to your workup,
Yeah.
so what's happening there?
We had what was on file, and I'm assuming at that first sale, that's what was on file. And then when we caught up with this sale, we reviewed the sale, when we reviewed it, the areas were already in place. We simply may be low on the areas. I've inspected the property, I would have to verify that. But I'm not asking for an increase to
Okay.
the bigger area, I'm sticking with the 6,600 square feet.
Okay. Because the INE has the same number that you have on the front, yeah. Okay, that's all I had, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Yes, Mr. Poole, did you have a chance to inspect this property?
No, I have not.
Okay. So the pictures were taken by,
That was from Google Earth, so basically I can get the frontages and sometimes interior, they're released.
do you have in your notes when the last time this property was inspected?
I couldn't tell you that, I didn't check that. I don't think there's been a recent inspection, otherwise there would have been some indication of there'd be some permit work on it.
Okay.
So, no, I couldn't tell you the last thing that
So-
specifically through the department or the city for that matter.
Okay. Is that not unusual on the city's part, that there's been no inspection with 2 sales?
Comment, given the sale history, I mean, it's pretty close. For the sale that was reported in 18, we'd be looking at that for the next reassessment cycle. The register sale date was for, maybe look at the sale, August of 2018, so that's the register date with land titles. My point was, for question number 2, it would have been reported May of 18, the date that was agreed on sale, and then they had financing for that. That financing must have obviously been approved before that May date, so that puts it into the pre-post reference, so it's not post reference. But for analysis, that's just too short a time for us to look at it.
Also on page 12 of your brief regarding the second sale, there's no capitalization put in.
No,
Is that a normal occurrence?
it's fairly typical that they won't fill out, even though everything points to it being bought for income producing basis, for them not to disclose what capitalization rate they use. So,
And does this, when you looked at this property, did it not sort of pique your interest that there were these two sales that it's quite a large disparity in a short period of time?
that's why I looked at the permit work,
Correct? Yeah.
right? That's why I looked to see if there was anything done to it. When we see the lease up for the sale, after the sale, the first sale, we see leases that are starting in 17, all in June of 17. So that would indicate that something would have happened within the property that would trigger a new lease up of the property.
Right, and also going from average condition to
Very good.
very good written down. Okay, thank you, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Poole, the sale that occurred here is post-reference?
The registry of land titles would be post-reference,
Yeah.
yes. But it would not be considered in my eyes as post-reference, given the fact that the agreed, like I stated, the agreed upon terms was for May.
Mhm.
And then there was financing approved by a mortgage lender. That mortgage lender would have had to have had all the facts and everything inclusive of that, which couldn't have been done within 30 days. So you would say that that would be just before the reference date. So it would make it fair game 4 weeks for analysis.
So Mr. Rack mentioned about an appraisal of 1.2 or something like that? But you know nothing about?
No, we didn't get
Okay.
appraisals.
Okay. So on your page 3, where do you get your rental data from?
From the INEs.
From the INE?
Yeah.
Okay, so from 35 to 40, the comps, I guess, that is the subject property, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, okay.
That would be on page 17.
Yeah, okay. So, one curiosity question. The evaluation, do you work towards the sale at all?
No,
No?
no, we look at it completely on a market-based basis. And many times when we actually start investigating the sale, we'll send out a sales mailer, but we don't always get them back. We sometimes send them out several times by the time we actually get them back. So that role's already been set. By the time we come to appeal, I can look at the sale, but it's not something that, in plain language, we call chase the sale or make the sale equivalent to assessment. It's just not possible to do that.
So, the workup is all market-driven?
Market-driven.
Okay. I thank you. Mr. Rapp, the floor is yours.
Yeah, just got some rebuttal information on that income expense map. I looked at the income expense mailer and I found it to be, it doesn't really make a lot of sense on how it was filled out. It looks like he's got recoveries, but then he doesn't fill out the recoveries. I want you to take a look at that bottom piece there listing all the tenants. Like, that sales questionnaire kind of said that there was 7,434 square feet. And that's actually the outside dimensions of the building, which would be on page 1 of the assessor's brief. Using BOMA standards, which is the Building Owners Association measurement, how they measure things. If there's tenants, you measure the inside areas that they occupy. So on the bottom there, that's actually from the income expense mailer. You'll see that it's fully occupied. There are only 7 units in there. And you'll see the square footage is 6,050 square feet that the owner has filled out the income expense mailer. So that's incorrect. The other thing is if you look at the tax recoveries, the immediate recoveries, and the utility recoveries, the total recoveries are actually, that he's listed are $76,774, when the actual expenses are only $59,540. So there's a $17,234 difference at the bottom there. To me, that just doesn't make sense. So I don't know where the owner's getting those numbers, but you can't recover more than you've actually spent. So he's recovering $17,234 more than he's actually put out. So that doesn't make any sense. So my point being that there's all sorts of things on that expense mailer that just don't add up. They don't make sense, and in my opinion, it should be disregarded because of that. And then you have the sale. There's lots of wonky things going on with that property. If you got any questions about that, then I'll get into my brief.
Mr. Paul?
Was this information taken from the 17-year income and expense?
It's from the expense mailer that you're using.
And I really can't challenge the areas other than where do the areas actually come from?
Well, they come right from the expense mailer that you submitted in your brief.
Okay.
I just wanted to point out the fact that some of the numbers just don't add up.
All right.
And especially, I don't know where he gets 17,000 worth of recoveries that
Or
he hasn't spent.
over and above, yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Stevens, any questions?
Well, did you attempt to reconcile this with your client?
I'm talking about the income and expense mailer that the assessor submitted is the previous owner.
Oh, the previous owner,
Yes.
sorry, yes, okay. Okay. Now I got it. Thank you, that's all.
Ms.
Yeah,
Lakeland?
I was forgetting that point. Thank you.
Ms. Lakeland?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Rack, the floor is yours.
Okay. Due to that income and expense mailer, I didn't use it. I used the 2018 full year expense mailer that the new owner now has submitted. I think it's more accurate, and a lot of the leases were already in place when the new owner took place. So basically, he would have purchased those leases. So on page 1, you can see that he's checked off gross, he hasn't checked off net. And you can see the total income of these from all sources is basically $107,976. He's using 6,600 square feet, which the assessor's using. So you go through all his expenses and repairs and maintenance, snow removal, etc. You can see his maintenance and repairs are only $1,851. That's not a lot. So he's got total expenses of $56,897. So you turn to page, sorry, I didn't number them. Go to the last page of my brief. The owner was wondering what was himself about the areas that were in the leases. So he actually had someone come down on August 2018 and actually measured the spaces. So you can see there's a total of 7 units in the whole property. That's all there are, 7. So if you go back to my second page, I've basically come up with the full year, how much rent and the gross rent on the right. So the total gross rent per year is $144,321. And you can see the gross leases run from anywhere from $19.55 to $32 a square foot. And the actual $32 per square foot would be the owner-occupied portion of that building. He's a management company. So he actually has a high rent for the space he's actually occupying, which is reflected in the fact that it's only 373 square feet. So if you turn to the next page, you'll see my workup. So you've got a gross income, $144,321. You've got expenses at $56,897. So you've got a potential income of $87,424. And I've adjusted, if you turn back the page, you can see that on all the leases, on all the units, on my graph there, is I've changed the area to actually 6,850 square feet based on the new measurements of the building. So the leasable area is actually 6,850. So that works out to $12.77 a square foot. I'm using all the city's parameters to get 1,169,745. So I'm looking at 1,170,000. And the owner did not purchase a property on the income approach. He purchased it because him and his partner wanted to buy it. I think he paid too much for the building. I mean, you look at these wonky numbers that are coming from the income, that were from the previous owner. I don't know what's going on there. And then, if you look on page 3 of the assessor's, page 3 and page 4 of the assessor's brief, with all those comparables all over the city. He has no comparables on Region Avenue. I don't, number 35 to 40, those numbers I believe are incorrect. But if you look at what he's using, the assessor's using $15.58 per square foot. If you go through all those leases, comparables over that, there's 13 of them. For the amount I'm asking for is $12.77. At that number and below, there's 26. So actually, there's 26 comparables that prove my number, and there's 13 that actually prove the assessor's number. So I think I've gone and beat on his own comparables. That I've got 26 against 13. That's my presentation.
All right, I thank you. Mr. Poole?
First, I have some questions. Can you please turn to your, I guess, on your page 1. On your due date, May 6, 2019, for this income and expense questionnaire, you're using post-reference next year income and expense questionnaire, right?
That's correct. The leases are still applicable because they were all before.
I'm aware there's some discrepancy and irregularity between the INEs that we're looking at for the year, but this information here is post-reference.
Yes, except, you'll let me answer, is that the leases aren't.
So,
But I think it's a better, I think the information is more accurate than the other expense mailer.
so the checks off here, partially owner occupied. Which property again is, or which tenant is the one that's partial, or tenants is the one that's owner occupied?
I would state that it would be Red Door Management.
Right, door management. So that $32 lease is a book rent.
That would be correct. It is the highest, rent there, and for 373 square feet, I think when you look at the economies of scale, I think he did a pretty good job at coming up with what the market might be for small space.
On your page 2, where it says net lease, they check net leases.
That's correct, but it's not a net lease when you go to, when you actually look at the income expense mailer and you go through it on page 1. There's a tendency for people not to actually understand what a net lease is, and they don't check things out properly, but if you look on page 1 of my brief, it does say gross.
Can you please turn back to your page 1?
Yes.
It doesn't indicate what the actual net operating income is.
Excuse me?
Look at net operating income.
Someone
line.
forgot to,
So do we actually know what the net operating income is and who's covering what expenses?
well, it's a gross lease, so the owner's covering expenses, because actually, if you look,
But
Where it
they
says-
didn't actually declare.
where it says net operating income, it says line 22 minus line 217. So line 22 is
I can do the math, but
107,967, subtract 56,897, you get 51,070.
I can do the math, I'm sure we all here can. But they're not actually indicating who's paying what as far as these expenses. They're declaring what the expenses are, but they're not declaring what they're recovering, they're not declaring what's being paid. It's some discrepancy between this post-reference information and the information I had on the year prior.
Well, the fact is they checked off gross, and they have, if you look on page 2, there are no utility recoveries, general recoveries, or maintenance recoveries listed in that. So, I mean, he's not getting any recoveries. On the page 1, it says gross.
When this sale, when it was purchased for $1,350,000.
Correct.
You have the sales questionnaire in my brief, but not in yours. You said there was other interests, or they didn't purchase it based on the income potential? Correct, it wasn't based on the income approach?
What page are you looking at on your brief? Quickly,
Page 11.
page 11.
So my point is, they put down that they purchased it for 1.35 million, which was exactly what the appraised market value was.
Correct.
Right. If you look over on page 12, they don't fill out what the capitalization rate was, and then on line 32, was this purchase price based on the property net income? And they check no. So what was the rationale for the purchase of this property? You're effectively here before the owner, or for the owner through agency, but you should be aware of what the actual rationale was and the motivation was for the purchase of 1.35.
Him and his partner just wanted it. Yeah. People make those kind of emotional purchases, and, I mean, he owns two properties, and in my opinion, I don't think he's too savvy when it comes to purchasing properties.
Okay, so he wanted it for 1.35 million, which was exactly what the market value was for the report. Did you examine or inquire what the report was? And was that based on income?
Say that again?
Was the market appraisal report, which was used for purchase, based on the income approach?
I haven't supplied any of that information. I think you're
Did-
asking me questions about your information.
No, you're the owner. You indicated that's what the report was. I'm asking about what the report was they used to purchase for the same price. Do you know of it, or did you inquire about it?
Well, I'm not gonna answer that because, basically, you're supposed, at this point in time, you're asking me questions about the evidence that I presented. I haven't presented any evidences to, on the report. And all I can say is, speaking to the owner, he just wanted to buy it, period.
Do you have any market comparables in your report?
No, I'm relying on your market comparables.
You came up with the opinion of value for your property before seeing my market comparables?
Yes, I came up with the actuals, and I think the actuals, as I've stated before, there's contract rent, there's market rent, and a lot of times, contract rent is market rent. I mean, it has to be,
So,
and sometimes it has to be the same, otherwise, no property would be,
so effectively, before seeing my brief, when we did the exchange, you valued this property based 100% on leasehold interest contract rent, without examining.
Well, I
market
examined some leases in there, and I believe that he was paying market, and I was happy with that.
Okay. Can you name any deficiencies within the property? You inspected the property?
Yes, I have.
Can you name any, or highlight any deficiencies or superiorities of the property, given the fact that the two sales questionnaires report as average, and then very good condition?
Well, again, the owner's not really savvy. If you go into, I mean, that's just a personal opinion as to what it looks like. I mean, a building's a bunch of drywall and flooring. It was not in pretty good shape. The only deficiencies when it comes to renting is that Unit 6 is at the back of the building. That's the only thing. You'd think that Unit 6 would get a little less rent because it's at the back of the building. Otherwise, it's a typical building.
Okay, so, given the fact that the leases all started up in 17, are you aware of any renovation that occurred within the property for tenant fit-up?
Before that?
Meaning, was there tenant fit-ups for the current tenants, given that they've all started roughly on the same date, which is?
I'm not aware of any.
Why would all the tenants start, approximately, the leases start on the same date? Unless there was a renovation, because typically you would be seen as.
Well, he purchased the property, and I don't know whether or not he redid leases, or I can't speak to that, to be honest with you.
So, from the physical condition of the property, from your inspection, are you indicating that there was no renovation work, or it was just in good space? Was it below average, or what is your opinion of the space?
It was average space. I mean, it's nothing spectacular. It's not like there's fancy features, waterfall features, or wood walls or something, or wainscoting or anything. It's just drywall space.
But you did not include any pictures of the actual spaces?
No, I did not.
Is there a reason for that? You were in there, you inspected the property?
Yes, I inspected the property.
Typically, you include pictures of the property when you do your briefs?
Typically, to be honest with you, my camera doesn't work anymore. Both the batteries that I have their cell won't support it anymore, and I have a flip phone, and a flip phone won't take pictures.
Can't make fun of you there, I got a flip phone too. Okay, that's the whole question.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
I think my questions have all been answered, so I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Linkletter?
Yes, my questions have been answered,
I
thank you.
just have one. You've, uh, you've probably talked to the owner. At the time of purchase, was there a list price on the building? And was it sold MLS or anything like that? Was it a private sale or, you
To
know,
be honest with
anything
you, I
about?
never really asked him a lot about that.
Okay. So, but, you know, he's completed the questionnaire in regards to, I guess he would probably, got standard financing, okay? And you don't know whether there was an appraisal done by the banks or anything like that?
No, I just know that he had an appraisal done.
Okay. But you can't really tell us what the list price was and what they negotiated or?
No.
You know?
No, I don't recall that.
Okay. Summation, Mr. Paul?
We're using a market-based approach, unencumbered by lease for fee simple. We produce the market parameters with market rent. We feel that $1,383,000 is at market. There is a sale for approximately that independently done from, which proves our analysis, pretty much bang on, in my opinion. And my opinion that Millet's analysis is based on a leasehold contract rent, which would not be fee simple, which would go against pretty much every municipal board order that I have seen. Everyone argues that it's fee simple, but without actually testing that rent against market, there'd be no way to determine whether that is at market in Millet. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Reck?
Yes, in my opinion, I think the owner paid too much for the property. We have, on page 3 and 4 of the assessor's brief, we have a test of market. When I look at properties, I always look to see what the property is generating in rent, because by appraisal techniques, is basically, there's contract rent and there's market rent, and contract rent and market rent can be the same. In most cases, that is. And again, I said before, is that the assessor's comparables, there's basically, out of 59, there's 13 that basically are higher than his number, and there's 26 that basically are my number or lower, so I think his comparables have proved that the rent that I'm using, which is the market, or contract rent, is market rent, and I'm asking for the board to reduce the value to 1.17 million. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reck. I think that concludes all of your presentation, so thank you, and results very soon. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
maybe short term.
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
Sure, okay. Alrighty, we will call the meeting back to order. We will go to Dr. David Friesen's Drive, number 1.
Do you wanna do that one last, or?
Let's do it first, let's get it out of the way.
Oh, I don't know.
We'll have Mr. Navarro sworn in.
I need some coffee.
I'm carrying my own drinks.
I don't, but you can use mine, so I'm going to write it down. Okay, I'll swear you in first. You swear or affirm?
Sorry.
Sorry. Can you state your full name, please?
Marcelo Navarro.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Alrighty. So, Mr. Paul, the floor is yours, sir.
File number is 19-2099. Roll number is 0609-323-6400. Address is 1 Dr. David Friesen Drive. The 2020 assessment is for $17,080,000. This is a fairly newer property, built in 2010. It's 3 stories. We have a gross floor area of 71,943 square feet with a leasable area of 65,033 square feet. There is also 53 indoor parking stalls. First, let's go through the property. On page 4, it's photos of the property. It's on the corner of, sorry, wrong one. So let's go to page 11. Spoke there. It's on the corner of Birding Glass Road and David
Okay,
Friesen
so this
Drive.
page 4 is not this.
No, that's the comparable one.
Oh, that's a comp. Okay, sorry.
I misspoke. That's why.
That's
why I
fine,
corrected.
got it.
They're very similar in nature, but I'll get to that.
Okay, all right.
So, as we go through the property, like I said, it's a fairly new property, built in 2010. Gives you an idea of where it is. It's in Sage Creek Development, just off of Bishop Grandin and Leishman Boulevard. There's ample parking on site. As I spoke before, there is 53 indoor stalls, parking stalls. On page 14 are photographs of the property. Page 15 are getting into the interior photographs of the property. This is straight from their webpage. I have yet to be in the building. To the website for this building. So as you can see, it's high office finish, high grade finish. Qualico's head office. This gives a good summary of the property. It's very environmentally friendly, it's cutting edge, it's a lead design for as far as health, performance, and environmental aspects for efficiency. As you can see as we go through on page 20 and 21, gives you some more interior photographs of the property. It's overall a well-built design property. On page 22 is a write-up. Prairie Architects did the design of the property. I'm sure Qualico built it themselves. As you can see, the people who were involved in the property. And I'll just read it verbatim. The Qualico head office building is the anchor for their own new Sage Creek Village residential development and defines a new corporate vision for the company. Highly visible from Lashmody and Bishop Grandin, it is in the southeast sector of the city with a commanding corner site that overlooks adjacent neighboring storm retention lakes. This office building provides a unique opportunity to set the tone for future development in a new suburban community, as well as become a collective home base for a diverse, rapidly expanding staff. So it's office. This whole property is an office property. There's no construction on site. There's none of that. That's all done on site. So, the character and nature of this building is critical to defining the concept for development. An urban, vibrant office building neighbored by adjacent shops, cafes, and a contemporary small prairie town Main Street. Targeted for a LEED certified level and achieving LEED Silver, this building demonstrates Qualico's corporate commitment to sustainability. It is an office building where better indoor air quality leads to fewer sick days and increased productivity. In addition to the energy efficient geothermal heating and cooling systems and a thermal mass precast concrete structure, this building is designed for solar orientation and to maximize daylight on the south and east side while limiting exposure on the west and north sides. In keeping with the small town setting, the building arises only 3 stories above grade with a total floor area of approximately 66,000 square feet, not including 1 level of underground parking. Regional plantings and at ground level and on the green roof areas are selected specifically for the prairie climate to reduce water usage and maintenance. On a larger scale, this project represents an exciting opportunity to create a beginning for a more sustainable environment where it really is possible to live and work in the community. So what they try to do is blend the high-end office building in with the setting that it's in. And it's an upper-end building. So when I looked out at the comparables, what do we look for comparables? So on my comparable, page 3, our larger end comparables for 93,000 square feet of inventory for comps 1 through 9 all in Taylor, Waverly area, Pembina area. They average $17.58. The weighted average is $17.44, and the median is $16.85. But one building really stuck out, because this is pretty much a class of itself. But there was really one new build that was very similar in nature, in my opinion, which was comparable 10 at 1020 Lower Merritt Boulevard. It's approximately built in 2012. There's 59,000 square feet of rentable area. It achieved an average rental rate of $21.13. Excuse me. It is on page 4. Sorry about the confusion earlier. Just off Sterling Drive and Lower Boulevard. It does not have underground parking though, but there is ample on-site parking for the tenancy of the property. As you can see, picture below, it's very similar in nature. This building itself though is a OFM, it's office medical. Having said that, I've been through the building, I see an oral surgeon there, as well as I've been through the oral surgery group on the main floor, and I've toured the building. It's predominantly office oriented, majority of it. There is some medical usage, lab areas, and a surgery on the main floor, but vast majority, it would be very similar to the construction quality, if not a bit below what the actual quality building is. So when we go through this property here, it's the most like and similar that I can see, although the other one is office, this one is office medical related. There's a pharmacy in there, there's general doctors where it's just office related. You see a doctor, you see a receptionist, there's meeting rooms within the tenancy of each doctor. And like I said, some of them do have a bit of lab area. So, as you can see, the rent ranges from $19, $26, $22, $21, $30, $18, for the average of about $21, as I stated. So this building here, again, very similar in nature, similar location. With the exception of Sage Creek backs onto residential, there is not the residential component here. So when we go through the analysis of the property, I will now go through on page 7. Our model predicted approximately $20.98 a square foot for an average rental rate for 65,033 square feet. Potential rent is $1,364,333. Vacancy at 5.5% produces an effective gross income of $1,289,295. Expenses at 2% and shortfall at 7% or $7 a square foot gives us a net operating income of $1,238,471, capped at 7 1/4. Given the size of the property, 7 1/4 is the proper capitalization rate. Produces a value of $17,082,359, and rounded up to just $17,082,000 or $82,000. So, given the nature of the building, I think this is reasonable. It's a newer building in a great location in an expanding neighborhood. There's a large marketplace in and around it of people who are high income earners in Sage Creek. This office location is capitalizing on that. Given a comparable property similar to it at 20 Lormier, leasing another $20.13 overall for 59,000 square feet. It's the most similar comparable that we have in the city to the subject property. I think that rental rate is achievable, and with that I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
Yes, you got on this point of pointing out that there are high income earners in Sage Creek, correct? Are there high income earners in Linden Woods and Waverly West as well?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So we're trying to compare.
I think we can agree on that.
Okay. Now, in terms of the first set of comparables that you have, so these are comps 1 through 9, you have an average of 1758, weighted average of 1744, median of 1685. And yet your model predicted a rent higher than that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Can you give an explanation why?
It would take the quality of the building, it would take the location, it would take the newness of the building. All those things being factored in would yield a higher rental rate than the average, because it simply is higher than the average.
Okay, yet you have buildings here that are 2005, 2008, and then you have your 2012 building. You know, and I don't know about 1999, 1998, was there a really big change in technology in terms of buildings during that period?
This is a LEED certified building.
Okay, okay.
There was a very well
Would,
write-up article.
Would 1020 Lorimer be LEED certified?
I'm not certain on that. There was no information I can gather whether it would be or not. I'm just looking from the typical floor plate that I've seen, and the pictures that I've seen of the subject property.
Okay. And are tenants likely to pay more for LEED certified buildings?
Absolutely.
Do you have evidence of that?
And every single LEED certified building in downtown Winnipeg, whether it be 360 Main, Hydro Building, they all indicate lower than average costs. So when you have lower than average costs, you would then be able to get a higher than market average rent.
Those would be in the downtown though, would they not?
Any LEED certified building, regardless of its location, if you're gonna be balancing out cost of, I'm a renter, I have to pay X amount, but now I can pay less than X amount because it's a better, more efficient building, that allows me to pay more for the rent itself.
And you've studied LEED certified buildings to see how costs have changed
I
or
don't need to
expenses?
see Artistry advertise theirs, Hydro advertise theirs. This is, whenever you get a certification level of that, it's usually the first thing that bolsters their advertising.
Okay. So, jumping to comp 10 here. Now, I know this building well myself because my daughter's pediatrician is here, so I also walked through this building myself. This building is demised, is it not? It's not one single occupant.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't think that would affect the rent?
As far as multi-tenanted building
Versus
for the
single
comparable
tenant?
versus the single tenanted building, which is not geared to multi-tenanted, it's not. This is the best indication of market value that we have. So,
Okay. So you wouldn't look at single tenanted large buildings, correct?
if
In
you
suburban
could find a
areas?
single, I'll answer it more of a appropriate manner. If you could find a single tenanted building similar to the subject property that leased out in full, we would be looking at that, but there isn't one. This building here is the best comparable that there is for the subject property.
Would I be able to charge more for a group of smaller units than I would if I had just one unit?
If you're seeing these economies of scale play down, there's typically an economies of scale, yeah. But it doesn't drop the rental rate by a significant degree to get to the number that you're asking for.
Well, you know, I would agree with you maybe if there were one or two tenants here, but there are quite a few tenants here, are there not? How many tenants do we have here in total?
As far as
The total tenant count?
on comparable number 10,
Yeah.
there's 21 CRUs.
21 CRUs, okay. Now, if you turn to page 6 of your brief, this is your comparable again.
Page 6.
Yeah. Did you look at the vacancy of your building?
Yeah, there's about 9,000 square feet of vacancy.
It's roughly almost 16%. typical for suburban offices?
As far as, this, say that again.
Is that a typical vacancy for a suburban office?
No, a suburban office is typically less than that. But there are properties that have intermediate vacancies.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Are you indicating that there's some kind of barrier to market for the newer building, 1020 Lorraine?
No, I mean, you're saying that this is the best comparable to the subject.
Physical characteristics is the
Yeah.
best comparable. This
Okay.
is like similar is.
Yeah, and we're disputing rent also, I mean, you're presenting this as comparable here.
I'm
Comparable
presenting, I'm comparing the marketplace. I'm also comparing comps 1 through 9, and then comparable 10, building economic unit as itself.
Well, your comps 1 through 9 actually are lower than rent.
But that's the point, that the actual subject properties is entirely superior to those comparables. This comparable number 10 is the most like and similar property for an economic unit that there is in the city. So when you're looking at this property here, and again, medical orientated, office medical orientated, you're getting approximately $21 a square foot. This building over here is a single tenant orientated to Paula Post head office, but it's still even superior to that, but it's the most like best evidence.
Would you get more in medical scenarios of medical oriented buildings?
Depending on what it is, yeah. If you have a lab, surely. If there was tenant inducement put into that, or TIs for fit up. But in this case here, at 1020 Lumiere, I don't believe that's the case. There's simply $21 rent on average. Predominantly, most of it is you just go and you see a doctor. It's a meeting room. You sit in a reception room, and then there's your meeting rooms off to the side. Some of them, there is one or oral surgeon I see. Similar situation. There is some lab in there. Western surgery, absolutely, there's some lab in there as well. But predominantly, it's just office space care to medical. And this is office space care to home construction and a head office.
And understanding that our building, our subject is one occupant, one space, are there costs in demising a building like that?
If you're going to be putting on the market as a multi-tenanted building, there would be some costs. How much would that be borne by the tenant moving in or by the owner? Depends usually on the lease up and a long-term tenancy. If you have a long-term tenant, it'd be more likely a secure tenant. There'd be some shared costs in that most likely. But in this case here, I don't picture the subject property ever being anything but a single tenant building.
Those are my questions.
I thank you. Ms. Stevens?
Yeah, with your comps, I know, understanding that there's no comps in the same area as the subject property, but I'm just wondering, that all of these comps are in generally that sort of southwestern part of the city, including your number 10. Would that not be considered a better location than this particular property? Given that this is likely the only, as far as I can think, that's likely the only office building of that kind in that area of the city.
Yeah, I think I mentioned or touched base on that. If you're looking at it from an investment vehicle, I think this is a good location for a property of this sort. You're in a location that doesn't have any competition. You're in a location that is high demographic of high wage earners. You have a location that is growing. I think this would be an anchor point for type of development of such.
Depending, I guess, what goes in there, right?
So,
And in a similar vein, I was just interested in your cap on this in a 2010 building that's of the quality that you're pointing out.
at 7.25.
Yeah, so, because this is coming up to the higher end of your
Size.
range. So it's the size of the
It is
building,
the
not the
size.
location? Okay.
The size, once you get over approximately about, the break points, about 60, don't quote me, I think about 60,000 and
Okay,
around there.
and then it bumps.
It's because of the risk of the largest
Yeah,
of the
okay.
building. I'd like to also point out that we don't have a parking income stream for the actual underground parking. That would be So, everything added up, this speaks to just a superior building. And given the building owner, I don't think you expect anything less.
Okay, that's all, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Yes, Mr. Poole, I think you indicated you had not been to the subject property.
I just toured the virtual website on the property.
Okay. So given that, you're not aware if they had, well, they obviously did, they obviously built this building to their personal specifications.
And office
So-
type property.
Yeah. But to their specifications. That might not be suitable for other tenants. That's where I'm. Was there anything indicating that on the website?
If you're asking me, because they're a home builder type supplier, everything that Qualico, they accomplish quite a bit as far as their operations. If you're asking me, could another type of business move into this property if they weren't there? I don't see there being any real barrier to that. Like I said, it's not like they have any on-site construction or any on-site crews or any storage of anything. It's just straight office. So whether you're, a really good example would be the Payworks building. It used to be the former Manitoba Hydro building. If Payworks would have been occupied in that building, which they bought suited to themselves, they could easily be moving into this property. This would be similar size, similar tenancy, one CRU, there's the demand for it. They bought that property for, Payworks bought it for a little over $6 million, put another $6 million into it. So there is a demand for that kind of, this kind of property being a one CRU. And I don't see from the plans that I looked at or from their website that anything here would be a barrier to just office use.
And your comparable 10 on Lorimer, and I'm sorry, you may have stated this, but is this a LEED building also?
I didn't find any record of it being a LEED building. It's simply from the floor plate and from the quality of construction. It may have some level of certification, but I haven't seen any advertising on that.
Okay. And is this building fully leased?
This comparable?
Yes.
No, I believe 16% vacancy, 9,367 square feet is vacant. And 59,000 square feet approximately is leased, of the totally 67,467 square feet of space.
So, just in regards to location, because Stevenson had asked about the location being sort of in the eastern corner, you thought it was as good a location because of the area it's in, Sage Creek, as southwest, like the comparables on page 3. But are there other office buildings in that area of this size?
No, this is simply a newer development, and someone's got to move in there first. This is an anchor development for this area. And given the fact that Qualico's in that area building, it's a logical choice for them to locate here. But it didn't, maybe a bit different way. Qualico was in Spears Road. They were in around there, and their head office is there. They didn't have any issue moving here. Payworks is on the corner of Waverly and Wilson Place. They would have no issue. That would be a tendency that would have no issue moving here. I don't see it being that far off of out of the area just because it's a newer area. I don't see any inherent risk any more so than any of the two locations.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Poole, what this building cost, you know?
I don't think I looked at the permits.
No, work permits that were taken out, or, what do you think it cost?
Give me 1 second. It may be in there. I typically don't look at the cost.
Okay,
Because the cost
yeah.
isn't something that you would necessarily get
No.
on a transaction.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
unless it's in dispute.
Yeah. Okay, so you really don't know. So this building was built for their specific purposes.
As an owner built,
Yeah.
and given the fact
Yeah.
that it's qualical,
Yeah.
I would think that they would 100%.
So it's all
suit those.
owner occupied?
Yeah.
All their departments are there?
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't have any market data for the subject property because it's owner occupied?
No, there wouldn't be any leases
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
There's no sub.
But you had
If there are
talked,
subtenants, there'd be internal, we wouldn't. see.
yeah, but you had talked about vacancies, there was some vacancy? Did you
No,
say?
no, that was in 10/2011.
Okay,
That was
okay,
in the
okay,
corner.
okay, that's in the other, down,
And just to be clear,
Yeah.
given Qualico, like, given the nature of the property owner, I don't think, I'm gonna say this the right way. I don't think anyone built this property without a plan B, obviously, or design it for a plan B. But I don't think plan B, they're ever gonna anticipate people bankruptcy moving out of it. They're building this to stay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
if that's answering the question, I don't think they're,
yeah, okay. The other
sorry,
question.
cost to build, $20 million highlighted.
20 million?
Yeah, I didn't have the permits with me, but the cost.
But that's just the cost of
That-
the building,
Exactly. You shouldn't-
excluding land.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be looking at costs as far
No,
as
no,
market.
I just like to, know. The other fact that I see, you're both at the same cap rates, but wouldn't it command a lower cap rate?
Not given the size.
Yeah, but cap rate is associated with
Risk. Risk on return, risk of return. All factors being considered, I don't think 7.25.
That seems, you justified, because of the size, but I think that probably it should be lower.
You want to move it, or I take that into consideration.
Okay, no, I'm
I'm not
not,
asking.
okay, so was there an override for 7.25, or?
No, this would fall into our parameters being
Okay.
a larger CRE, a larger building
Yeah.
of such.
Okay, I thank you, Mr. Poole. Mr. Navarro, your presentation?
If you turn to page 3, you can see the overhead picture of the property. Again, it has outside parking, inside parking. On page 4, you see a blowout of where the location is. And you can see that I believe this aerial photo is from 2018. So there has been some further development of this area. I would say for the most part, everything around it is pretty much residential or residential mixed use. To the west of it, I believe there are areas there for retail. But in terms of office buildings, so far, this is the only one. Which means that you are kind of in an island here. Now, the reason they built here is because Sage Creek is their development. And again, Sage Creek is extending southward towards the perimeter, so it was a natural move for them to move to Sage Creek. I'll skip over some of this information, go straight to the meat here. On page 8, what I did was I tried to find some larger, newer rent comparables. Obviously, this is kind of a rare one. It's quite large. The comparables that I have are 845 Regent at 30,528 square feet with a net rent of $17.25. 50 Fultz Boulevard 25,600 square feet. I believe there may be other tenants here, but this is a large building as well. $20.96. And 755 Portage Avenue, 35,200 square feet, $20.50 per square foot, for an average of $19.57 per square foot. That is the rent that I went with for the full size of this property. In terms of vacancy, we went with a slightly higher vacancy of 6.7, a shortfall rate of $7 per square foot. Non-recovered expenses, again, we've gone with 7%. Capitalization rate that I used is the same capitalization rate that the assessor used, 7.25. If you turn to page 16, you can see the full workup here. So I would disregard the 6.7, because apparently I've gone with a 5.5 vacancy.
That's correct.
Yeah. So it's basically the model parameters that the city uses on these ones. The only difference here is essentially the rent and the 7% non-recoverable that we use as opposed to the city. It makes a big difference. So our end value is $15,082,359, or $15,082,000. If you look at the appendix on page 19, you can see the first comparable at 845 Regent. On page 20, you can see the second comparable at 50 Fultz. And on page 21 again, the third comparable, 755 Portage Avenue. That is my presentation.
I thank you, sir. Mr. Cole.
I just have a few questions,
Yep.
getting back to your page 8. You have 3 comparables.
Correct.
845 Regent and 755 Portage are both Winnipeg Regional Health occupied properties,
Okay.
so they're office medical related. I'm well versed in Winnipeg Regional Health properties, as I handle basically almost the entire portfolio for quite a bit. The other property is 50 Fultz. I've also handled that with Altus, and it's been under appeal. Are you using the $20.96 a square foot as net?
Yes.
Are you aware that this was in contention, that this wasn't a market rent, that there was tenant inducements, and it was built site specifically, and this rent shouldn't be used? So, you may have a few minutes tables on this one. So, getting back to your comparables on page 19, this was a former grocery that was heavily renovated to suit Winnipeg Regional WHRA's needs, long-term covenant. Right. Yes.
If it's medical, yeah.
So, and then over on page 21, site-specific built for Winnipeg Regional Health. I believe there's a tenancy, there might be a small tenancy of charity in there as well, if I'm not mistaken. No, sorry, my mistake. The tenancy's on the bottom left-hand corner, which is separate from the Winnipeg Regional Health lease, but still on the roll. Again, office medical related to suiting Winnipeg Regional Health Authority's needs. So you had a contention with a private practice being office medical related, being inclusive in the analysis, but for Winnipeg Regional Health Properties.
Well, I think you're misinterpreting what I'm saying there. Not so much the medical, more the demising.
Okay, so,
So if we look at your comparable, you have about 20 tenants in there. And if we look at my comparables, I believe these are, even if we take out, these are all single tenants, are they not?
yes, there are some.
Yeah.
So, getting back to your comparable, one at 1725 a square foot. This is behind, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, another commercial office structure that's built in front of this, and quite frankly, it's an old Sobeys, if I'm not mistaken, reconverted to this. Would this not attain a lesser rent than the subject property being an office building, LEED certified, and quite a superior build?
I don't have any evidence because I couldn't find any LEED certified buildings in the suburban areas.
Okay, so your next two comparables being at $20.96 and $20.50 at 755 Portage would be right in line with what we're putting on at $20.98.
Well, unfortunately, you only have one building to suggest that though. So if we're gonna actually put everything into 1020 Lorimer and ignore the other properties that you have,
I simply didn't go with Winnipeg Regional Health Properties because they are a government agency.
they pay a rent, do they not?
They do pay a rent, but it's a government agency and it's a different strength of covenant for that type of property, so.
Well, what kind of tenant do you think would rent from a building like our subject?
An office-related property similar to what I said.
So that would require a substantially large company to rent from a property.
They are in the city. Hayworks is a good example.
Hayworks, I would believe, is a rare example, is it not?
There are national companies that are in Winnipeg that are looking for a large CRU. There are also local companies. For example, I can see a Great West Life moving into a property like this. They're a large firm, although they occupy their main 60 Osborne property, they occupy many other spaces throughout the city. This would be a similar large size corporate office that could be.
Do they typically build in areas where there is existing commercial office buildings?
I'm just saying for tenable space, whether they're chose to build here because Qualico is developing the site, or the fact that they're simply moving into the site because they have control of the area, probably would play into it as well. Okay. All right, so, sorry, last question. Qualico is a well-knowledgeable builder, well-knowledgeable marketplace in the marketplace, correct? They have many subsidiary ventures, right? They're basically a controlling player in development, property development in the city.
I would say that they are a large player in the residential development business. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily a large player in the commercial development.
Would not Qualico have an appraisal on this property?
A property appraisal?
Yeah.
I'm assuming we haven't seen it.
Being effectively the owner sitting here through agency, have you approached the ownership group to see what their internal documents would be for market
We
value?
typically don't see their appraisals, nor do we ask for them.
That's the only questions.
Thank you. Ms. Stevens?
So, your higher vacancy rate is based, I'm just looking here, so it's based on,
You changed it.
It's actually 5.5.
It's-
oh, you did, oh, you
changed it.
changed it,
You
right,
changed it.
you changed it on your sheet, yeah,
Okay.
got it. Okay, ignore that question then. Okay, so my next one was, forgot about that, sorry. Your comps, and I recognizing that this is a difficult building to find comps for. they don't seem to be the same quality of property as the one we're looking at, or particularly in the case of the one on Regent, similar building at all, really.
Yeah, I would say for this type of building in a suburban area like Sage Creek, you're gonna struggle to find something this large. So I would say these are the three that I was able to find. There's not a lot out there.
And in terms of comparison to the one comp that was presented by the city, the number 10 on the city's brief, how would you compare that to these buildings and the one we're looking at?
Well,
Because you don't have it in your
Right,
evidence,
right.
so.
so I wouldn't disagree with Mr. Cole in saying that this is a LEED certified building. It's built to a high standard. However, at the same time, when I look at the comparison at 1020, and that's what you're referring
Yeah.
to, the major issue that I have there is that is a building that has been demised for multiple tenants. And you're gonna be able to charge a higher rent for a building like that per unit than you would for one single tenanted building.
Okay, and your comps are all single tenanted, you said?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, that's all I had, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
Yeah, I think I just have one question in regards to your comps. Where is it? Comp number 2 on Fultz, I believe. Did you have a chance to inspect that property?
50 volts?
Mm-hmm.
No, I've driven through this property, but I haven't been inside of it, no. And in fact, I haven't been inside any of these buildings.
Right.
At Qualico, because I'm at Sage Creek quite a bit, dealing with other land issues, I'm by this building all the time, like the subject.
Been in this building?
No, the subject?
Right.
No, I haven't, but I've been outside of it all the time. I mean, it's a beautiful looking building for sure. What you would pay for it on the market, I don't. Again, it's in Sage Creek.
Just back to Fultz Boulevard, do you know what type of business occupies that building?
Not at the moment, no.
That's all my questions.
Sorry, could I just ask one
Yeah.
quick one, just when we're talking about Fultz Boulevard, where is Fultz Boulevard? I don't know where that is.
It's in Fort Garry, east,
In the industrial?
yeah, in
park?
that
Okay.
industrial area.
Yeah, okay, that's, I was wondering what area of the city, thank you.
It's just us.
It's Oscarville, okay, thank you, yes.
So, Mr. Navarro, you agree for the, you're in agreement with the overall cap rate?
Well, again, the difficulty in valuing something on like this is that it's, again, there's not much else to compare it to.
But
I would agree.
But you're in agreement?
I would, yes, I would agree, yeah.
So, there's a difference in regards to your rate compared to the city's rate. It's $1.40 a square foot difference. And you got the 7% non-recoverable. So, my question would be is, as an owner-occupied property, you think that the non-recoverable, per se, 7% management is applicable?
Well, as Mr. Cole has stated, this is a fee simple assessment, so we're looking at what's happening in the marketplace, because again, we're kind of ignoring the situation here. So, yeah, we would be looking at what would be happening in the marketplace.
But because of the two things that I had mentioned, there's a difference of $2 million between you.
You're playing with large numbers, unfortunately.
All right, summation, Mr. Poole?
Yeah, first starting out, I'm completely in agreement with the appellant that this type of property is a difficult property to try and use the market-based approach on because simply it's at the market. There's not a lot of stock that I can pull from to pull comparables to derive this. The most similar comparable that we stop is the one at 1020 Lafayette. This is a LEED certified building. In this case, although we haven't really touched much on the non-recoverables would be lower given the cleanness of the building, given the quality of the building. So that speaks to that. My opinion would speak to that. My comparables that I used are, I think, indicative of the marketplace. It shows that the typical marketplace, the stock is not on par with the subject, being rated at 1744, but comparable number 10, which is the treating Long Rainier Boulevard as a one economic unit, is at $21.30 per foot. So that is similar to the subject property that we put on the rent. Two of the comparables, although I would not use a government Winnipeg Regional Health Authority long-term lease for this particular property. Two of the comparables that the subject, or that the appellant has used is in the $20 range. I would shy away from using a long-term government lease in this property. But I do believe that, given the quality of this property, cost of operating this property would be below market, indicating that the certification of the property, that you'd be able to get an above-market rent due to the subject property, the superiority of the subject property, and in combination with the underground parking, which is there, that's would increase value as well. So all aspects considered, I think the value at $17,082,000 is reasonable, and I think it should be maintained.
I thank you. Mr. Navarro?
Yes. In terms of the non-recoverable expenses, in terms of that, I would say that the LEED certification would play little role in that. Non-recoverable expenses include items like leasing commission, tenant improvement allowances, marketing, advertising, bank service charges, mortgage interest, professional fees, owner building maintenance, asset management fees, depreciation, things like that. So I tend to differ with him on that. Now, in terms of the property itself, again, you're talking about a single building located in Sage Creek where there are no other office buildings. So if Qualico were somehow go bankrupt one day and that building were up for lease, that would be the question mark is what would there be a challenge in leasing a building like that? I believe given the location, the size of the building, you would need a very large company to lease a building like that in Sage Creek, or otherwise you would have to demise it. So we tend to think that our representation of value is correct.
I thank you.
Can I just add one thing, although we didn't touch it, we spoke to the non-recoverable. We know there were non-recoverable arguments backwards and forwards. Can I just submit our rebuttal? We don't need to go through it unless you don't want it submitted. We've all listened ourselves and heard all, just for record.
Okay.
I have a copy of it myself, so.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not even gonna, this is more for later on. not for-
Hang on to them.
I can hang on. You can get them afterwards.
Well, can I just take mine? and
Yes,
put in the-
yes. Okay, we'll go on to Marion Street, 262. Mr. Cole, there's a item on here for non-co-op, so we'll deal with that first.
File number 19, 3486, roll number is 0607533870. The property address is 262 Marion Street. We're asking for a non-cooperation. Section 53.3, the municipal assessment, and if there's a reduction order to follow section 54.3.2. If you go to my page 12, these are the years that I looked up. They did not report in 17. We did receive for 15 and 11, although we had to send registered mail for it. So in 17, the year which is the year which we require information, on page 13 is where it was sent. Or sorry, I should say this is the address it was sent at 262 Marion. This is a copy of what was sent on pages 14, 15, just a blank questionnaire. We then have our tracking of the follow-up registered mail that was sent to the same location. As you can see on page 17 is the Comfort Way Inc., Catherine Peters at 262 Marion, sent in June of 2018. Again, on the next page is the same ID that was sent just by registered mail. I then cross-referenced the assessment and tax roll changes that we had on file on page 21. There was a name change for Catherine Peters. I'll get into why the name was changed, but the property address that was used was 262 Marion. On the following page, where on page 22 is where it was mailed to, again 262 Marion. And then I cross-referenced again. I did a search for the Comfort Way Inc. Catherine Peters is the director there, page 23, and indicating that they are 100% owner of the property on page 24. And then in 2015 is the last item that we got from them on page 25. So they did receive it. It is going to the right place. It just simply wasn't responded to. That said, I think I proved the failure to comply. I'll open to any questions.
I thank you. Mr. Navarro, your presentation?
Not really a presentation, but you can ask questions.
Nothing?
Actually, I think we have an agreement on, yeah.
Okay.
So we're agreeing to the penalty.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Navarro, you will be presenting first.
I have a recommendation we worked out.
Okay.
Agreed to. I can just read it.
Yeah.
In lieu of you stating it, I'll just say it if you can agree to it.
Sure.
Okay, so the original value was going to be for $693,000. I'm gonna make a reduction down to $623,000.
Okay, and the reasoning?
Just the market rent.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Navarro, are you in agreement?
Correct.
All right. Any questions from our panel?
Nope.
No questions.
Okay. I think that concludes that part. Okay, so we'll go on to 360
Sorry.
Marion.
no, that's good.
360 Marion?
260.
260?
260?
Yeah. Do you want me to, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we're asking for a confirmation on this.
All right. So for the record, you can just read it in
Just bear with me.
the address, the roll number, value.
File number is 194392. Roll number is 0607533860. Address is 260 Marion Street. The roll year, the assessment for 2020 is $888,000. Won't be getting to the parameters.
No. Okay.
We're confirming this, yeah?
Yes. I think that concludes our hearing, so Mr. Navarro, thank you for your presentations. Results fairly soon. Mr. Paul, thank you very kindly.
Thank you.